Hello, listeners. If you are curious about technical communications, then this podcast is for you. On each episode, I will interview a guest who will share their unique journey. This is Inside Tech Comm with Zahra Matabana. Let's get started. I'm honored to welcome today's guest, Beth Allphin. Beth, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Zora. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on a Saturday morning.
Oh, glad to be here.
And I'm glad to have you here. So, ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am currently in Comm. I am a technical writer working with or at NETSCOUT. I have been there 24 years, I think it is. I haven't calculated that recently.
That's a long innings. That's amazing.
I did not expect, if you had told me back when I started with, it's actually been bought out because we are in telecom, that I would be with the same company, I would have laughed at you, especially, after experiencing the boom and the bubble. But, the reason you stay at a place is because the people around you. So that's why I'm still there. So anyway, 24 years. And part of those years, I've managed some small groups of people. But right now, I am an individual performer and still working there. It started out as a small startup called iNet and then was bought out by Tektronix Communications and then Danaher. And then now we are NETSCOUT, and it's been NETSCOUT since 2015. So that's work. So personally, I am married, been married for 26 years and have two daughters, 17, Olivia, and Elizabeth, who is 15.
Okay.
And then we have two dogs.
So you have a full plate.
Full plate, you're right.
Right?
Working full time. Yep.
Yes.
And a mother. Yes.
And a mother.
All about that.
It's all about that. And I think it's a beautiful aspect about, I'm a mother too, and I have two girls. You're almost an empty nester, probably, with your first one ready to go.
Getting closer. I can't believe she's filling out college applications. And oh my gosh. Yes, it's hard to believe.
It's another chapter in your life.
Absolutely.
So you have to straddle technical writing and full-time parenting.
Absolutely. You know what that's all about too. And you've got younger ones.
Yeah, I've got younger ones, yes.
Take more time, yes.
They do, but I guess they sort of complement our journey.
You're right.
And help us discover things that we wouldn't have known otherwise, the strength that we have, right, as a mother, I suppose.
Yes. And we get really good at time management, right?
Very good. Yes, absolutely. And I think being individual contributors, sometimes when you're not part of any software development lifecycle, time management is critical. So this facet of our life helps us figure out how to manage our time better, I suppose.
Absolutely.
But thank you for sharing that beautiful information with us. You said you've been with this company 24 years, which is tremendous. So you've seen the .com boom.
Right.
As you called it, the boom and the bubble and the bust.
Exactly.
How has that journey been?
It's exciting at times, but then sad at times because you see your team being built up and a lot of great people around you, but then you see your team being dissected and people being let go. But then you see those people who got let go on to brighter things. So you knew that it was meant to be. So that's the positive of it. But yeah, it's been a roller coaster. I guess that's why I think back to all those changes, the ups and the downs, and to still be at that same company. It is an amazing thing because there's not that many people in this day and age. In my father's generation, that's what they did. He worked for Xerox, and he stayed with Xerox for 40 plus years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Retired with them, yeah.
I would agree with you. That's pretty rare. When I started my career, I thought I would probably be with one company. But of course, I switched careers from programming to technical writing. And I know that you have an interesting background, and we are going to get to that. But yeah, you're right. To be in one company for a long time, as long as you have been there, is remarkable.
Right. You don't hear about that much anymore.
No, not really. I haven't. You're probably one of the few that I've heard from who's been with for such a long time, because as companies get acquired, that attrition happens. But you mentioned that you have managed small groups and you have also been an individual contributor. I want you to talk a little bit about that. When you managed, what skill sets did you have or did you acquire? So you've at the same company. So that's a pretty interesting thing. It's can you please feel free to share as much as
Sure.
you can about that?
Okay. I can't remember the exact years that I started, but I had been there several years, and the group had grown to, gosh, I think it was maybe 20 writers. So that was a lot for our manager to manage. So the idea was to start creating a leader so that we, maybe like a project manager, maybe
Mhm.
that's what they called us, to where we took over the day-to-day management of a number of writers, and then the project managers then reported up to our tech pubs manager.
Mhm.
So I think I was the first project manager in the tech writing group. And I think they chose me, number one, because of my experience within the group itself, but also had any leadership experience. But I think what I showed was being able to manage projects on my own without much oversight from management. So
Mm.
they saw that as somebody who could potentially lead others and manage others. And I'll be honest with you, I was young and intimidated by the role because I was now having to manage people that used to be my teammates.
Right.
And for somebody who had never studied management, I probably at that point had taken some seminars, some workshops, maybe on project management, but not any
Hmm.
kind of extensive training on management or anything. So I'll be honest with you, I don't think I was very good at first.
Oh, but I think it's a journey.
Exactly.
And the fact that you were even considered for that and then you were in that role speaks to the skill set that you had probably innately, and then you went on to develop, right? We are all a
Absolutely.
work in progress in our careers.
Absolutely.
If you take that approach, then you can make the most of that opportunity and build upon it. So you got that break.
You're absolutely right. We are
Right?
a work in progress for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how I look at I look at my career. And from what you're saying, you attended webinars, you didn't have any project management experience. How did the team take that when you were made the project manager?
I think you have personalities that didn't mind it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the personalities that might have been a little resentful,
Right.
maybe because they thought they would have been better at it, or why didn't they get asked? So I think that's just
That's just
natural.
normal. That's
Yep.
yes. So from your perspective, I want to ask you, how did you manage the people aspect? Because looks like you may have got a handle by attending webinars and figuring out how am I going to manage a project. It was an innate skill and then you built upon it. But from the people side of it, what would you like to share?
That was the hardest part,
Mm.
is the people management, because I was, in the past, friends and coworker friends, you talk with each other and you vent and you get through hard times and good times together. But then when you become a people manager and people come to you with issues, it's a whole different perspective. I think that was the hardest part for me, with people coming with personal issues and me having to give direction to people,
Right.
which as an introvert, I'm not comfortable doing. And then there's the conflict management. Oh, over the years, I've learned so much about it. And when you first deal with conflict in the workplace, it's not comfortable because of so many years of, I'm now at a comfortable point in my career where I'm better at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's a work in progress. So with the more conflicts you have to manage, you get more experience with it. But that was the hardest part, was when two people would come to me at a standstill because they could not work with each other. it was before I was a parent. I think being a parent helps.
I would agree.
Yeah, because you're looking at these two adults who are acting like children at times, and you
Uh-huh.
just want to, as a parent, you just say, well, I would tell my kids to give each other a hug and work it out. But before I had kids, I didn't even have that perspective. So I just, luckily, I had HR manager who I could go talk to, and then, of course, my manager to help give tips and ways to work through these issues and whether to escalate it to HR. So I would say yes, those first couple of years managing people was definitely difficult, but it was worth the journey. I learned so much.
What I take away from this awesome conversation that we are having is you built a community around you so that you could lean on somebody when somebody came to you to lean on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Right. Because my manager was more experienced than me. And of course, the HR manager was dealing with the broader range of people and people issues. So we've got to have that community, or otherwise we go insane.
Exactly. And, somebody who is, let's say, in your today is in that position, who has been selected to become a team lead / project lead and has to manage people as part of that role. What would you advise them?
The first thought that comes to mind is don't take yourself too seriously. And that might have been one of my issues early on, was because you're put into that role, you think you have to come across a certain way to come across as a manager, as somebody who knows what they're doing at every moment in time, and somebody that should be taken seriously. And now looking back, it's like, just be yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously. Help these people get through their projects, take things out of their way, roadblocks. If they're having trouble getting, making progress, how can you help them? But don't think you've got to come across as in their space all the time. And because of my lack of experience, I thought I had this image in my mind of what a manager or a project manager should be. So now it's yeah.
Oh, that's such beautiful advice, Beth, because I have never been a manager. And one of the big reasons I would say is it is intimidating. But sometimes life gives you that opportunity and you want to grab it. You don't want to regret it. And what you just said, not to take yourself too seriously, is extremely important, especially when you are put in that, I would say, it's a demanding role.
Yes, it is.
Right? And you go from an individual contributor to a manager. Sometimes it's quick and you may not be trained. You may.
Of course, yes.
Right?
Most of the time, I would say, yes.
Right. So, yeah, I've got some really good takeaways from here. Build a community so that you can lean on as a leader. And then don't take yourself too seriously. Two very important things.
Right.
You should be writing a book about that. I would love to. I would be one of the first ones to read them, because these are pointers. You know about these things on a day-to-day basis, but then you tend to forget.
You're right, until you reflect back on it, which you were helping me do.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, before you became a technical writer, I know, because we've had this conversation, that you were trained in accounting.
That's right.
So I want you to talk about, how did you go from accounting to technical writing?
That's funny. My father I told you he worked at Xerox, and he was a technical trainer and worked on documentation for years. And I had actually gone in to work with him when I was in middle school. And so I saw what he did, but it never crossed my mind that that's what I wanted to do, probably because I was so shy, and the thought of being a trainer, I didn't know there could be a separation from what his job was. So I probably said, no, I don't want to be a trainer, therefore I don't want to do documentation. So I dismissed it. The reason, or at least I should say one of the reasons, maybe I should say one of the main reasons I decided on accounting was some accounting courses in my senior high school. And I look back now and it was really just bookkeeping, but they called it accounting.
Mm-hmm.
So I really loved those bookkeeping classes. And I thought, wow, maybe this is the degree I want to continue on. And so that's what I based my college degree on. And I'm thinking back to, the writing that I experienced in college. I never really enjoyed that kind of writing,
Huh.
but I was never really exposed to technical writing classes
Okay.
to
So what
get it.
kind of writing was it that you did not like?
The literature writing, having
Mm.
to write papers about and to pull things out of literature, or so the creative writing. I consider myself resourceful, but not very creative, like creative from new ideas, but I'm very resourceful, meaning you can show me one idea and I might evolve that idea, if that makes sense. So that's
Yes.
just how my brain works. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
a new idea creative kind of person. So I think I was probably intimidated by the creative writing and just bored with the literature writing,
Got it.
had the,
Okay.
yeah. So I think if I had taken a tech writing course, that might have spurred some interest.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was a senior in college, and the couple I was living with, because my parents had moved out of state, they had their own company that did customized training and documentation, and they actually used to work with my dad at Xerox.
What a coincidence, huh?
Yes, yes. So they needed somebody part-time because they were really busy at the time. It was the 80s, it was the boom, and they needed somebody just to come help, do simple edits, implement. And so that's what I did, and it was good money. It was better money than going to work retail or, in fast food. I didn't have to, go work and come home smelling like burgers and fries, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I got a taste of, even though I wasn't writing, I got a taste of what they were doing. And at one point, I would say, just kind of tossed a project at me and said, we need a procedure for how to put this box together. I think it was a box that an office supply store was selling, to where it was sold flat, but
Uh-huh.
they needed instructions on how to fold it because it had very complex folding and cardboard inserts, and
Okay.
it turned it into like a box for storing, I think it was model trains or something. So you can imagine it was just had different size slots in it. So he just gave me the box. It was all flat at that time, and I just gave it a try. And I had so much fun. To me, it was like a puzzle.
That's great.
And yeah,
That's great.
so that was my first exposure into technical writing versus the more, I would call it, complex school writing.
In the other interviews that I have done, this has a similar thread has emerged where somebody either found that talent in the writer, in that future writer, and said, you're just going to do it for me. So how was that experience for you? What did it tell you?
That I was so close to getting an accounting degree, and I wasn't sure I was enjoying the accounting I was doing. And honestly, I can't remember the timing of it, but I think it was my senior year. But by then I was like, I knew I was going to get my degree, but it actually changed my path a little bit because I was going to do a 5-year degree plan to get my master's in accounting. And at that point, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to get a 4-year degree and go from there. So I got my degree, and I tried, back then we didn't have internet, so I was cold calling out of newspaper advertisements for jobs, but I didn't intern. I didn't intern in accounting because I didn't have that perspective
Mm-hmm.
of how important it is to intern and get practical experience. And so I would go down for an interview for, like, say, an accounting manager for a small office, and they would say, well, tell me about your experience. And I'd be like, I don't have any. So it was a couple of interviews like that, and I was still working part-time for this company. And at one point they offered me a job, like a starting technical writer, and I decided to take that chance, and I'm so glad I did.
Wow. Did you expect to be in that career for this long?
I think at that point, no, I did not know, but I knew at least I had a start. And I had also studied for the CPA exam and failed the CPA exam, which is just for the record. or so I hear. It's very normal to fail the CPA exam the first time around, kind of like the bar. But going
Huh.
through that process of very intense studying of accounting and then being so frustrated at the results, that was also part of my decision. You know what? This technical writing seems a lot more interesting than accounting. So,
I would agree with you on that, though,
yes,
selfishly.
I can't imagine myself still in accounting. To me, I don't think it would just be monotonous.
Hmm.
Whereas technical writing to me changes. Even with the same company, people say, how can you be at
Exactly.
NETSCOUT for so
Exactly.
long and you're still in the tech writing group?
Mm-mm.
And I just tell them it's every project is new to me. It's like a puzzle. And sometimes it can be overwhelming, that puzzle. But once, as I'm figuring it out, it's fascinating to me. And that's what drives me.
You know what? To me, you've hit the nail on the head.
Mm.
To anybody that thinks that technical writing is boring, you got to step in. You got to, wet your toe
Exactly.
to find out how fascinating this field can be, how
Exactly.
challenging it is.
For sure.
Right? I mean, just to what you said, you got to, writing is probably a very small part of your, right?
Really good
Can
point.
can you share that? I mean, I harp about this all the time to my non-TechCom colleagues, but can you share what a typical day in your life is?
Sure. It's not that you would guess a tech writer would spend most of their time physically writing, but a lot of it is the pre-work and the research up to that point. So it could be basically my process is, starting with some kind of document plan and the pieces that I need to put together. So I would, from that plan, pick one feature and start emailing my subject matter experts and
Mm-hmm.
start conversations with them, maybe get them on the phone. Maybe they need to explain something more. It's easier to explain over the phone versus in an email. And so it's just gathering that information. We've got different source material where I can research, whether it be feature specification documents that were
Mm-hmm.
written by engineering, where it talks about how they are going to develop a feature or a product. I can dig through those. Or maybe from a higher level view from our product managers, where they talk about what they want the product to do at a high level. And so comparing those, did product management or did engineering meet product management's
Mm-hmm.
expectations? Is there do those docs synchronize with each other as far as the vision for that product and for that feature? So that's a lot of reading. And with this 5G coming out, I'll have to go off and do some research on telecom in general. So it's a lot of research, a lot of reading,
Uh,
and until you finally sit down to actually
to,
decide what you're going to write.
I mean, that was in a nutshell, right?
Right. Very high
Right.
level.
Very helpful because for somebody that is thinking about becoming a technical writer, you have to have that bent of mind to go research
Yes.
and to talk to people. If you're thinking that you're going to sit in your little, I guess,
No.
cubicle and not talk to people, that is not true. You have
Right.
to have, and sometimes you have to be the initiator of those conversations. You have to be proactive. Would you?
Absolutely. And I think one of our members, I think it was during our mentor panel discussion, she also hit the nail on the head of, I think it was during the advice where she said you need to be curious. And I think that's what makes a good tech writer is being curious, not settling for just what's written, whatever source that they're pulling from, is being curious and asking those questions. And to your point, not just sitting in a cubicle expecting people to throw information at you.
Mhm.
you. If you think about being a technical writer, you really need to know that it's a lot of research and think about, do you love research? The idea of reading a lot before you actually get down to writing.
Get down to now. Do you also get to be hands-on with whatever technology that you're going to be writing about?
With the products, we usually have some lab products that we can quote unquote play with, not in the sense of how our customers, I don't get the view into the complex systems that our customers have, like Verizon and AT&T. I can't access those systems. They don't want us on there.
Got it.
But we do get the hands-on with lab equipment to access the GUIs. When I did hardware, I was able to get down in our lab and take pictures and, see the boards and be able to do that. So the hands-on is important, yes.
Quote unquote, the word you used, play with. I love that metaphor because it makes the job that much more fun, right?
Absolutely.
Because, and I think most technical writers, I don't want to overgeneralize this, but I've heard this term being used. We play with technology, we play with, and we are hands-on.
Right.
So it's not all writing. There is a practical side to that experience.
For sure. Absolutely.
Especially if you're in software or hardware, in technology. I've always been with technology, and based on what you've shared, you're also a technical writer for telecom, again, which is technology. And you've done both hardware and software because you mentioned GUIs.
Right. And so when we play with those GUIs and get hands-on, it turns all those source documentation and all those high-level views into more of a real view for us.
Yes. Now, I want to go back to your experience as a project manager. Having had that accounting background, did it help you with project management?
I think in the sense of detail-oriented. And that could be more of my personality, and maybe that's what also drew me to accounting was the details of the numbers. I just really loved the checks and balances of accounting. And so I think that part, I could say, relates to the project management, because you really do need to be detail-oriented, number one, to be a project manager, but also the tech writing, to be able to discern as you're reading through all this research of engineering documents and product management documents, is being able to discern the gems of information out of all the noise, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Let me clarify. The reason I asked this question is I've encountered conversations where technical writers are intimidated and generally not financially aware. So when they are given opportunities to grow into management, that becomes a hurdle, not having a financial understanding. So from your experience, what you said, being detail-oriented, be it in accounting or technical writing, is a skill that you need to develop, right? If you don't have it, you need to develop, because being detail-oriented is critical. But how important is it to be financially aware, to be in the role that you were, had you not had the accounting experience? What would you have done?
I think in my case, because I was more of a limited manager, in the sense that, to your specific question about financial, I did not deal with budgets or salaries from the financial perspective. So just in my limited experience, my management was more from the managing projects of people and then managing people, but not the budgets enough. Am I understanding your question correctly?
Yes, okay. You are. I think that's an important distinction, that you are not managing budgets. Right. Now, however, to manage a project, right, you're going to look at the trends and you're going to look at the burnout charts and whatnot. Did you have to do that?
From the financial perspective?
Not from a financial perspective, but more from a statistical perspective.
Just from milestones and cross-functional teams. From that perspective, yes. So having to multitask several different projects at once and manage those milestones and conflicts of those milestones, and then the people, several people managing their different milestones and their conflicts. So yes, that was something that, like you said, as it's something that we develop.
You develop.
So, right.
So, is there any specific tool that you use to manage projects, or to rather track them, if you will?
Over the years, I think I've dabbled in, is it called Microsoft Project? So there were a couple years where we managed projects in that software. But I think if I could say majority is just Excel.
Mm.
And so there were different tools I created. For a couple of years there were, I think you had asked about metrics,
Metrics, yes.
percentage of complete. And so there were a couple of years where, developing spreadsheets to track, percentage complete of the whole project versus each individual feature and what percentage were we complete. So I think my comfort level was Excel because I could customize it to what the current needs were, what was management requesting, what metrics were they requesting at that time. So it would be Microsoft Project and then Excel.
I'm pretty intimidated by Microsoft Excel. I mean, I can use it, but I have never used it for metrics. So for somebody like me, would you say that these are skills that I can pick up, or what resources would you recommend that I look at?
I would say I would not say I'm an advanced user of Excel. So I would say definitely Excel is for beginner users, and then you could build those skills up to do amazing things that I don't even know about, because there's charts and things. I never got into using charts and pivot tables. I have not used that. That's something I would like to learn. So it's a great tool for that, but it's also for the beginner users where you just need to Google or get into the help and learn a few things to be able to figure out a couple of calculations that are just perfect for, that moment or whatever simple metrics you need at the time. So
got it. But from my takeaway from this piece of information is that it is achievable. It is surmountable.
Oh, with Excel? Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I don't remember much about Microsoft Project. Have you worked with Microsoft?
Not at all. I have never used Microsoft Project. And I've been at many different companies, and at no company has I would say the doc manager used Excel. They've used other tools. So I've not encountered a manager who has used Excel, except in my recent experience where one of my peers used Excel to do some fantastic metrics.
Oh, right. Yes. You can get dangerous with Excel.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's right. And I was pretty impressed by that. And that's why I'm thinking of, for someone who is considering, right? Oh, what tools would I need to know? Looks like you could start with Excel. If let's say you're the lone rider and you're starting to track your own projects, you just need to, and you don't even have to take classes. You could just Google up and learn about it.
Absolutely.
Right? Got it.
Very intuitive.
It is very intuitive. Thank you for saying that. Yes. So, and again, we use the metaphor journey. So it's okay to not have all these skill sets when you're given the opportunity. You can develop these, and you can start with the simplest of tools that are available to you without spending too much money.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's just when you have that opportunity, it's learning to make the most of it. Because I think back to when that company gave me a chance. And I think it was just being the curious person I am. That's what drove me to want to know more about what is this technical writing and what is everything that I could learn and what tools. So it's just having that desire to learn the tools to gain those skills.
Yeah. Again, coming back to our conversation, curiosity is at the top. I probably would think that if anybody is getting into technical writing, you're not studying towards it. Very rarely is somebody studying towards it. You happen to chance upon it. So curiosity is very critical for you to discover this niche field.
Right.
So if you've discovered technical writing, you probably are already curious.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Now, what made you jump over? Did you know a technical writer, or did you have to do both at one point in your job?
Oh, Beth, you're smart. You're turning the tables on me. But I will answer that question. this interview is about you and I want to talk about you. But
Okay.
I also was interviewed at the start of my career. I was a wannabe developer, and I had no clue about technical writing. And I originally come from India, and I was working for a media company, and I was in a pretty weird role. It was called information analyst, but it was a customer facing role where customers would come to me with technical details, and I had to convey that to my developers. So I was the liaison. That was the word that was used to describe my role. And sometimes I had to write what the customers wanted. And because it was a media company, I ended up doing a little bit of writing sometimes. And I also had an undergrad in English literature.
Oh, that helped.
So that helped. So, but when I got married and I came to the US, I was like, what do I do now? I got to figure out my next steps. And somebody said, hey, maybe you should consider technical writing. So just like you. And I interviewed for that position. And the lady who interviewed me, she said, you suck. I'm sorry, I can't hire you. but that was actually, and she was actually being helpful. And she said, don't take me seriously. I think you have the talent, but I recommend that you kind of train yourself a little bit on it. Because the reason she said that was I was taking a very creative approach to technical writing. It's a different mindset, right?
Right.
And thanks to her advice, I went on to do a master's
in technical writing,
in technical and professional writing.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yes. And so I did have to train myself, and I'm thankful for it because it did open so many opportunities to me to really understand and respect this field. And I had some great professors. I'm told that they were some of the early trailblazers of this profession. So I was very fortunate.
And at that time, did you appreciate her feedback?
At that time, when you're young, you think you know everything.
But looking back, you appreciate it more.
Yes, absolutely. I think after I got into my master's program, it was it was not an easy admission process. That application it sucked the life out of me, if I can say that. It was a very strenuous application process. And I got scholarship because I couldn't afford it. I was a foreign student.
Oh, I see. And this was in Boston, right?
This was in Boston, from one of the good universities, private universities. So no, at the time, to answer your question, I did not. But after I went through the rigorous application process, I realized that I'm glad that I did not get an easy break, very honestly.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah. So I think I appreciate it. I'm thankful to her.
That's good. That's good.
But thanks for asking that question.
It's a good attitude.
Yes. Oh my, this has been such a great conversation, Beth.
It's good to catch up.
Yes, it is. This was like catch up to me. We never get to sit and catch up. So this was like, Beth, sit down, let's talk.
Absolutely. It's been fun.
Right. Is there anything, Beth, that you would like to, just last words that you would like to say to anybody that is trying to enter this field or changing their career into this profession?
Well, I think what we've touched on is stay curious. That will help you gain your skills as a technical communicator. And also, I think that piece that we touched on with don't take yourself too seriously. Mm-hmm. I think we touched on it from the management perspective, but just in general, as a tech writer, as you start working with team members and getting feedback, don't get too attached. Someone once told me that. Don't get too attached to, this whatever piece, the content that you write. Just because you put your, blood, sweat, and tears in it doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have some really good feedback. And so to be open and to keep learning from others as you go on this journey. We're always learning.
Yes.
So to your point, when we're young, we think we know everything. The sooner we can grow out of that, the much
gem
more
of
content.
Advice.
Yeah,
that's a gem of advice. I mean, I've been in that position in myself where I've taken something too seriously that I've written about. You get too personally attached to it.
I agree.
gem
too.
of advice, not to get personally attached to it at the end of the day, not to take yourself seriously, and keep that curiosity and that spark in you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Perfect.
This was a great conversation, Beth.
Well, thanks for having me, Zora. This was fun.
Yes, absolutely. And it was fun talking to you. This is it for today. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
I want to thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with us, Beth. Have
My
a lovely
pleasure.
day.
Yes, you too, Zora.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share on your social media to help me reach a wider audience. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app, including Apple, Google, or Spotify. Follow us on Twitter at InsideTechComm or visit us at www.insidetechcomm.show for the latest updates. Catch you on another episode.